Welcome to another UTS Startups Confessions video where I talk to someone I respect deeply. I say that at the start of every video, but I mean it every time, and I especially mean it now. Alfred, thank you very much for joining me. You have an incredible story in what you've done in the past and what you're doing now. Firstly, who eats plant-based meat? All right, a whole bunch of people.
Come on, guys, come on.
Who would like to eat plant-based meat? Yeah, everyone. Who's eaten plant-based meat and gone, oh, that doesn't taste right? And yeah, that's definitely a thing. Thankfully, Alfred is fixing that and creating a different future in Harvest Bee. So, if I can, could you describe Harvest Bee in 10 seconds?
Harvest Bee is early stage tech business focused on creating a new plant-based meat system that makes plant-based food taste better, be more affordable, and be more nutritious.
Okay, how?
How we're doing it is, well, we're really looking at different types of proteins, plant proteins, and looking at the natural attributes that they all have. Every different plant has things which are naturally occurring in them, and how you make them into plant-based meat, naturally those elements go into them. So traditionally plant-based meat has been really mono plant. They use one type of protein. Often it's soy, or it could be pea, but different plants have different types of attributes, and how you combine them create different types of textures, but also different nutritional elements. And that's what we're specifically trying to bring into to create a new plant-based meat system to enable food brands to create better tasting plant-based meat products.
Okay. Why are they not doing this by themselves?
Right. I mean, that's a great question. I think a lot of food brands often don't go up in don't have the in-house scientific R&D capabilities that you really need to consider when you're looking at their plant proteins and why they create the tastes in plant-based meat. A lot of them focus on taking commodity ingredients and use those building blocks to create in their new product development labs to create food products in groceries. But to really break through and understand how do you create something that's a real meat analog, tastes great, you really need to go right up to the field, understand what type of plants you're growing to create these proteins. That in our process we extrude them through a low moisture extrusion process, which is quite complex, we've built a pilot facility out in Penrith, but it's not tools that a lot of food brands naturally have at hand to be able to experiment. You've got to be mindful that the building blocks for plant-based meats were not constructed to make a meat analog. The product that we're making is a thing called textured plant protein, and that traditionally had been used for more base food uses, such as being as a meat extender. Like you put it in a sausage, you put it in a burger. It wasn't used to try to mimic the texture of meat. It would provide protein, it would lower the cost, and it would hold moisture, hold water. But now we're asking a lot from this ingredient, and that's where the innovation needs to happen, and that's what we're doing.
Okay, so who would have thought making meat replacement is hard and the company's coming up with their own solutions and not investing in the way that you are, or that a centralized solution can? And it strikes me as, which you've mentioned before, that it is something that is not unusual for the food industry. Like no one makes the whole thing themselves.
Yeah, I think there's clearly been some great trailblazers of the last decade that pioneered what we know as plant-based meat. They're pure play plant-based meat companies. Australia has its own, every country has its own. But you'd be surprised, or maybe not surprised, that people that actually, like companies that are actually making plant-based meat are far, far more than those companies. There are hundreds of companies, if not thousands of companies making plant-based meat, who had been making food for consumers before. But to create a bolognese product before you just buy the beef from a meat processor and the beef would be the beef and you mince it and you can make your bolognese. Now these companies are having to actually figure out how to make the beef before you make the bolognese. So it's created this challenge in industry to how do you actually make great tasting plant-based meat? Because it doesn't just come out like a commodity like traditional meat has. Everyone's constructing their meat. And with that construction, there is inconsistency, and that's why I think some of the audience have experienced not great plant-based meat products, because it is a bit of a black art, or has been in the past, to make a plant-based meat taste great. And we think there's got to be a better way to do that, easier way. So that's why we're creating a meat system that makes it more turnkey for food brands to be able to just do their job and create a really good product for consumers to eat.
Beautiful. Okay, thank you for letting me spend a bit of time on that, but it's a complicated area, and I think we kind of captured what it is. Who were you before going into Harvest Bee?
Oh, who was I before? I think had been in 10 years in venture capital. I was, most recent role before Harvest Bee was as a chief investment officer at Cicada Innovations. Cicada Innovations is, as you know, it's a deep tech incubator based over in Everleigh, and it's part owned by UTS. That's actually where I expanded, and I guess my eyes were open to the opportunity, not just in deep tech, but in alternative proteins. Because previously, prior to Cicada, I was predominantly software-focused venture capitalist.
At AMP and
yeah, I
Optus.
ran AMP's venture capital fund. Before that, I ran Optus's venture capital fund. So I had a great time in the early heydays of Australian tech. I guess it's, if you could market start of it in 2011, 12 maybe. And yeah, it was great to work with folks like yourself. And I think I've known you for now, 10 years. So really.
And you still come back. But I will say, early Sydney startup ecosystem enabled in large part by yourself and the work that you're doing. So thank you for everything you did back then. Honestly, Fishburners wouldn't have survived without you. And a lot of founders that had support from you as well. So thank you.
No problem. I mean, it's one of the, personally, to sort of segue into that, it's like one of, people have asked me what has been one of your most proud achievements in your career. And the funny thing is I've mentioned that, helping Fishburners, it's not something I did, but playing a part in helping Fishburners grow and become the first startup community and co-working space in Australia. I think that was a really important, part of our history here in Australia.
So despite seeing all those founders, you still felt okay about being a founder?
I think being a founder is from being an investor, it's like you're looking at yourself in the mirror a bit, but the highs and lows are just more extreme as a founder, right? Because it's different from being an investor. Investors, by proxy, are taking risk as well, investing in startups. There's an untold story about actually VCs, and I think a lot of them are lauded, but it's actually really hard to be a great VC. It just takes a longer time to figure out whether you're good or not. In startup land, as a founder, you find out pretty quickly. You'll just run out of money in a year's time, and then you're done. But I think the big change for me has been as a VC, you had the luxury of being more spread and being more broad, and you'd meet more people and you'd learn a lot things from different, technology spaces or different types of people and different problems they had. I think in a startup, as a founder, it's a lot more narrow, right? It's you have a problem that you've identified, and you put all your personal effort, your team's effort, or resources into solving that, and you naturally become much more heads down, focused on the problem, and you have to be careful to get you not to just be heads down, to also keep your head up to look at what's going on around you. Whereas as a VC, you're often at events like this, and you get around town, and it's different. I enjoy both. I do miss being a VC, but I thoroughly enjoy what I'm doing now.
But it sounds like being a VC was a great way of getting exposure to a lot of different approaches to entrepreneurship and to the technologies that ended up being interesting.
Yeah. I think you go in eyes wide open. You have that advantage, but it's not easy. I mean, being a founder, it's not easy, and it's not. I know that UTS Startups encourages, supports profoundly startups and people starting startups, but what I will say, being a startup founder isn't actually for everyone. Doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. I think some people should try, and they might succeed, but they might not succeed, and they find another role that they can play in the innovation ecosystem and industry that we have, which is so important, right? Yeah. For every one founder we have, we probably need 10 to 100 team members to support that founder. I think that's quite often an unspoken, unlauded thing. I mean, we really have to celebrate those people that work. The first few hires of a startup are really your first believers.
Yeah, agreed. And it's a great way to learn about entrepreneurship is working for someone else that's taking the risk on something. It's a free education or being paid to be educated. But I won't go too far down that path because I want to hear that. So Harvest Bee has been around for about 2 years. We came up with the idea in June 2020. Workshopped it. The team came together. We started to raise in late 2020. We closed our seed round in June 21. So it's about 11 months in now since we closed. In 1 year's time, we've expanded the team from 3 co-founders to about 9 people, 10 people. We're commissioning a pilot facility, R&D and manufacturing facility up in Penrith. It's around 800 square meters. And to make our meat system, our plant-based meat system. We've working hard on our IP, and can't really say too much yet until the provisional is filed. But we have some exciting products to bring to market, which address those issues around taste and nutrition and affordability. We've done a pretty, for a deep tech hardware startup. I think I'm really proud of what our team's been able to achieve. We've run really hard, but it's not without its challenges. It's been tricky to build a pilot facility during COVID, during global shipping logistics issues. It's never easy in startup, but yeah, it's been fun. It's not the best time to build a brand new manufacturing facility that hasn't really been done before. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we'll be, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is that all the plant-based meat you have in this country is often not made in Australia. And even if it's made in Australia, it's using protein that isn't sourced from Australia. So it's importing soy isolates from Asia.
What the hell is going on there?
Yeah, exactly.
We are Australia. Yeah. If we can do one thing well, let's make some plants.
Well, that's why we started off. We are using Australian wheat. We're using gluten, which is wheat protein. And we're the first of any Australian company making it here domestically. So our product is 100% Australian. Well, some of our products are. We actually we also call ourselves a house of protein. So we are protein agnostic. So we believe that there is a place for every protein. But there's different. I think you have to, if you really want to achieve a great product and a product that is going to, maybe replace, real meat. You need to be able to offer that the variety of nutrients and taste flavors or textures that real meat has. Like having fish tastes different to pork. It's just probably going to be made out of different proteins, right? So we want to use different proteins and blend them to create different taste profiles. So we're starting with Australian gluten, but you say we should buy Australia, but it's actually more cost efficient to do. You think about food security going forward. It just makes sense to source domestically the proteins that you have growing in your backyard. And our plan for to expand globally is to look at different proteins that grow in different geographies. You can't expect Australian wheat to be grown in Asia. It's just going to be different, and you're going to have different proteins growing in South America that are the staple proteins for that population. So I think the challenge is that how do you actually find these proteins that are going to turn into, you can convert them into great meat analogs.
I'm listening to you and I'm thinking there's got to be a lot of people watching this video that were like yourself, that were doing something they really enjoy doing, that you could walk into any VC and get a job and probably make lots of money doing it and have a lot of fun. How do you go from that into something that's complete other end of the risk spectrum, complete kind of reliance on yourself and your ability to make this happen from
funny.
nothing?
VCs, people say it's VCs, it's as I said, it's kind of like lauded that role and a little bit like, that's cushy. VC is, it's risky as well. People just don't realize how risky it is. I'll give you an example. Like, you can raise a bunch of money, and a typical VC is 10 years in term. The fund is 10 years in length. If you aren't successful in that fund, you won't raise another fund, right? So pretty much your career as a VC is finished.
So be lucky and then raise another fund and get better.
Another thing is, you won't realize until about year 4 or 5 that your fund's not going to be very successful. So by that time, you're sort of stuck in a rock and a hard place. You've got to see it out because your LPs, you've committed to your LPs. And you sort of see these zombie funds that go around that they're never going to raise another fund, but they're committed for 10 years. And if you understand fund mechanics and stuff like that, that's a risk that a lot of people don't appreciate VCs have to go through. If you don't make some good bets in your invest period, your first 1 to 3 years, you're done. And also, the market can turn on you, like it's turned right now in tech, right? It's an opportunity for new funds, but it's a problem. It could be a problem if you're in year 3, 4, 5 in your fund. Oh no, actually year 7, 8, 9 of your fund, and the market just turns and it drops 50, 60%, and you need to exit and liquidate your position. You have to return your capital back to your LPs. That's a problem. So, I think, sorry to go on a little bit about VC. I know the space a little bit, and people think it's cushy, but it's a slow motion thing. A lot of people don't realize how risky it actually is. I think as a founder, you find out pretty quick whether you're going to be successful or not.
Let me rephrase that question. Why would people go into VC when they can be entrepreneurs instead?
Yeah, right. I think, look, I think for me, I'm sorry I just went on a little bit about that, but I think I was at a juncture of my career. I'm in my 40s. I might look like I'm 20 something, but I'm in my 40s, and I when I left Cicada, I thought, well, do I join a fund, start a fund? I had many conversations with people to join their fund or start a fund with them, but then I met my co-founders, Christy Reardon and Werner Fugersberger, and this problem that we want to solve really struck a chord with us, and we developed conviction around, thinking we had something to really solve it, right? And I think at the core of that is really finding the people and the problem, which is the opportunity, and to go for it, right? You only live once, YOLO. So I think that's why it's been worthwhile. And I want to be able to. It might sound cliche, but I want to be able to tell my kids something that I'm working on something to hopefully make the planet a better place for them and their kids. Sustainability is an important, if not the most important issue that we have, besides world peace. I think, if I can put my energy behind that, I think it's time well spent.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with that. Yeah, round of applause for that, I think. Okay, so I'll start to wrap up. I'll do 3 last questions. As someone that spent 10 years in VC, then going into fundraising, how did you find that experience in terms of your understanding of the experience of a founder?
I had an interview about that. The history of Australian startups, and I talked a little bit about that. I think a lot of people have said to me, "Oh, yeah, you should have had no problem fundraising." It took us a while to close. It took us 8-9 months. It wasn't a quick one. I think a lot of Australian founders will lament how tough it is to raise Australia. But one thing I'll say about the Australian venture and early stage tech investment scene is that it has come light years since the time that we started doing stuff in tech, right? There was no funds when we started, right?
No.
So it's almost infinitely improved. And we've got amazing companies, and clearly the home for that capital has been well placed, right? Companies like Safety Culture, Canva, the Big Daddy, Atlassian obviously wasn't VC backed, but I think set the tone. I think there's been phenomenal returns for that early vintage of Australian VCs. That predominantly is based off software investments. I think all the Australian breakouts in this era have been software companies. Previously it was medtech, I think, and maybe some .com stuff like REA and car sales, but I think software. But I think this Australian the investment scene has been built off understanding software really well. I think we do that well, particularly enterprise SaaS. When it comes to deep tech, I think it's a very different story. I think there's a very different appetite and very different risk-taking profile that investors take in deep tech. And I'm not just talking about alternative proteins, I'm talking about the whole gamut. I think it's not as well understood. Software is more, not to put it down, it's more codified in how to invest in software. It's easier to understand whether a software company is doing well or not.
There's more of a pipeline. You can see if this is a revenue-generating SaaS product, hand them $500K and know you can flip it.
There's some comparables because it's a SaaS, it's a consumer-facing or enterprise, facing. It's well understood, and it builds on itself because you get talent from good companies and they leave and they join another one, and then it's de-risked. Yeah. So it's great. It becomes a flywheel, and that's what any good ecosystem should have. It should build off the shoulders of the giants that came before it. I think with deep tech, we don't have that so much. We don't have the collaboration. We don't have the cycles, iterative cycles that we have in our DNA in software. And I think we're still challenged by commercialization of research from universities. We are, and we don't, and coming back to fundraising, I think there are very few, less than a handful of funds that are specifically deep tech oriented. And in those funds will have people that understand deep tech. They deeply understand deep tech.
Some deep tech.
Some deep tech, and that's hard to understand lots of deep tech because it's you're talking about science and words you can't even pronounce, right? It's tricky. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for Australia to level up because we do have a great heritage in deep tech. We do have some of the world's, tier one innovations are coming out, but we have to unlock that investment. Fluidity, the friction is still there, I think.
Okay, two last questions. How has the last couple of years changed you as a person in founding this company?
How's it changed? It's made me a better person. No, look, I've always had a deep appreciation of the founder. I think a lot of the companies I've invested in, I think they would say that, Alfred empathizes. I mean, I was a founder before I was a VC, actually. Not a successful one, but I was nonetheless. But I think, how's it changed me? It hasn't changed me as much as you think, but I have a deeper appreciation of the highs and lows. I think it's just VC life's like this. Startup founder life is, just deeper highs and deeper lows, right? And I think that's part of the challenge of being a founder. How you ride those highs and lows and not let it, take over you.
And also not get desensitized. Like there's research around the financial kind of capability of entrepreneurs, and it tends to go away after stressful entrepreneurial experiences because you become numb to those kind of things and you don't pay your bills on time, you don't do other things.
I just did the AP run and payroll just before I came, so I'm very aware of the financial aspects.
Be aware, be careful.
And my bank balance going down, but I think it's, I try to apply the lessons I would, the guidance I'd give to my portfolio company founders in the past, and it's easier to sell someone, it's harder to do it yourself, and eat your own medicine. Alfred, what would you say to yourself? And
Well, let me ask that. So, last question: is there something you wish someone had told you before you started? And feel free to say it down the camera to anyone.
Don't do it, Alfred. don't. I don't. I'm really excited about what I'm doing, and I'm really excited about the team that we have. I'm really excited by our progress. I would have told myself, expect things not to go well, not everything to go right. I guess I knew that anyway, but they will pop up more often and more profoundly than you'd expect. But I think we have good hands. We'll figure it out. And I always explain, startups are a series of near-death experiences, right? And so it's just what it is. And
we're meant to be encouraging people.
Yeah, but it's great. It steals you, right? I love the chaos, and I traded in long time ago, a corporate career because I love the corporates. Great corporates. I work for corporates, but I found the startup, the near-death experiences. They are invigorating. I talk to my co-founders saying, what's the fire in the lounge room we have to put out today? They're the things that you have to do, and then you do realize that by doing these things are hard. It's not for everyone, but that's why these things haven't been done. Right? This is why these innovations, these businesses haven't been done, because that's hard. If it was all easy, it would have been done. So there is a natural aspect of, yeah, it's hard, it comes with the territory, and expect it, and yeah, just roll with it. Yeah, but find your support mechanisms as well, right? And they can come from a lot of different places. I think UTS Startups is a great place for that. But you can find it in your co-founders. You can find it in your other founders in the ecosystem. You do need to find a support network.
Okay, that's beautiful to end on. I am going to say, when you talk about deep tech relying on kind of shoulders of giants for people to build upon, I hope that Harvest Bee becomes that giant, and I think it will based on everything I know about you and the company. It's going to be incredible. I'll say to anyone watching, if you're working in plant-based meat or any kind of thing that might work around that area, get in touch. What website should they go to?
Harvestbee.io.
Harvestbee.io. We'll put it in the description, because I know things are coming up that are really, really cool that you can't talk about yet, but you need to get in touch.
Yeah.
There's good things coming. And I'll finish by saying every Friday at 3:30 we run these sessions. We're going to turn off the camera now and go into Q&A with the audience, where the really juicy stuff comes out. So if you want the juicy stuff, turn up to the events. But please, for now, join me in thanking Alfred.
Thank you, Mike.